My name is Eva Carter. I'm 32 years old. And this is how I took revenge on the man who shattered my heart, stole my future, and thought he could get away with it. They say betrayal feels like a knife in the back, but that's too neat, too clean. Mine came slowly, a surgical dismantling of everything I thought I knew by the person I loved most. It started in courtroom 4B. Fluorescent lights, stiff wooden benches, the stink of old coffee and sweat. And there he was, my ex-fiancé, Nathan Hale, sitting on the witness stand, raising his right hand and swearing to tell the truth. His truth, not mine, never mine. I sat frozen in the defendant's chair, wearing a second-hand blazer and borrowed dignity, while he described in perfect rehearsed detail how I had knowingly committed fraud in my private therapy practice. He called me manipulative, dishonest, dangerous, words so sharp I felt each syllable draw blood. I kept waiting for someone to stand up and shout that it was all a mistake, that this was some kind of sick joke, that the man I was supposed to marry would never do something like this. But no one came, just the cold clatter of a gavel and the heavy breath of a courtroom full of strangers. In the weeks before, I thought we were planning a wedding. Venues, guest lists, cake tastings. I had Pinterest boards, dress fittings. I was imagining white lace and warm vows. Turns out, he was planning something else entirely. My downfall. I remember the police lights flashing through the front windows of my practice, the way the cuffs clicked shut around my wrists, the way my mother cried as I was led out like a criminal, still in my work clothes, mascara streaking down my face, and the headlines that followed: local therapist accused of fraud, engaged mental health expert faces criminal charges. I had spent 10 years building my reputation. I had clients who trusted me, colleagues who respected me, a future that made sense, until he took it all. One tip to the state licensing board, one fabricated story, dressed in just enough truth to sound believable. He planted the evidence, lied under oath, and walked away clean. But I didn't stay broken, because he didn't just break my heart. He tried to erase me, and I don't vanish quietly. This story isn't about pain, though there's plenty of that. It's about what comes after, when the world sees you as guilty, when you lose everything, when you realize the only person who can save you is you. It's about revenge. Cold, calculated, precise revenge. And Nathan Hale? He had no idea who he was messing with. Before everything fell apart, I was someone people came to for healing. I was the safe space, the quiet room, the warm voice on the other side of pain. My name sat in gold lettering on the door of my private practice. Eva Carter, LPC, nestled between a yoga studio and a bakery in a sun-drenched Denver suburb. My office smelled like lavender and eucalyptus. I had soft lighting, a couch that swallowed you whole, and a kettle always ready to boil. Clients would tell me things they'd never said aloud, and I listened, not just with my ears, but with everything I had. I believed in people, in second chances, in emotional excavation. I believed, perhaps naively, that if you love someone enough, they won't leave. That belief began long before Daniel Brooks entered my life. My father walked out when I was 14. One morning, he kissed me on the head, said he'd be back after work, and never returned. No goodbye, no note, just an empty dresser and an echo in the hall. My mother, Carol, stitched herself together with long nursing shifts and silent grief. I learned how to be strong from her and how to pretend I didn't need anyone from him. But deep down, I did. So when Daniel came along with that easy grin and ridiculous confidence, I didn't just fall, I leapt. We met at a networking event I hadn't wanted to attend. He was talking about predictive algorithms and mental health tracking apps. I made a sarcastic comment about AI replacing therapists, and he laughed like I was the smartest woman alive. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Daniel was magnetic, tall, thoughtful, always 5 steps ahead. He brought me coffee without asking how I liked it, because somehow he already knew. He remembered names, dates, allergies. He made ordinary things feel cinematic. That kind of charm is dangerous when you've spent your life aching to be chosen. 6 months in, he moved into my townhome. We hung his art in my hallway, merged Spotify playlists, and made grocery lists for two. I let him into everything, not just my home, but my life, my work, my mind. He wanted to know everything, and I mistook that hunger for intimacy. He asked about my clients, how I handled the emotional weight. He suggested tools to streamline my workflow, digital forms, cloud based scheduling, encrypted billing software. All of it felt efficient, helpful, loving. He was a tech entrepreneur after all. His startup was in stealth mode, something with data and AI, and I didn't press too hard. I was proud of him, proud to be with someone who seemed so capable and driven. He told me I was building something beautiful and that I should dream bigger. Scale your practice, he'd say. You're doing the work of 10 therapists. Why not act like it? He made me feel like I was wasting potential if I didn't trust him to help me grow. So I did. I gave him access to scheduling software, billing systems, even file backups. He helped with the admin messes I never had time to untangle. And I thought it was love. Carol, my mother, saw it differently. She was never rude to him, but I saw the way she looked at Daniel. Polite, skeptical, distant. He's charming, she said once, folding laundry with military precision. But Ava, charm isn't character. Don't mix the two. I rolled my eyes and said she was projecting. She never liked anyone I dated, and besides, Daniel got me. He understood my stress, my long days, my emotional fatigue. He was supportive in ways no one else had been. Even Lena, my best friend since undergrad, was cautious. Just don't let him take over, she warned, sipping wine in my kitchen. You're a badass therapist, not a business experiment. I laughed it off. He's helping, not taking over. But they were right. I just didn't know it yet. Back then, I was the kind of woman who apologized when people interrupted me, who stayed late for clients because I didn't want them to feel abandoned, who believed vulnerability was sacred, and who mistook shared vulnerability for mutual trust. Daniel didn't just become my partner. He became my anchor, the one person I told everything to, even things I probably shouldn't have, like my fear that I wasn't doing enough, that my practice was growing too fast, that I was behind on insurance reimbursements and couldn't remember if I double billed a client last month. To him, these were confessions, weaknesses. To me, they were moments of closeness. I didn't know he was collecting my doubts, archiving them, weaponizing them. By the time I realized what he'd done with my trust, it was too late. But we're not there yet. This is the part of the story where everything still looks perfect, where I was still the healer, still the optimist, still the woman choosing wedding colors and dreaming about babies. This was the calm before the betrayal. And if I had listened to my mother's instincts or Lena's subtle concern, maybe I could have stopped what came next. But I didn't. Because when someone promised not to leave, you cling. And when you've never really healed your own wounds, you miss the warning signs, even when they're right in front of you. The first time I realized something was wrong was when a client called me, crying, saying her insurance was rejecting my therapy notes as fake. I was between sessions, sipping burnt coffee and reviewing a treatment plan, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID said, Marsha, Tuesdays at 10, a sweet woman with PTSD who'd come so far. I answered, thinking she needed to reschedule. Instead, she was sobbing. Ava, they're saying, they're saying my insurance won't cover my last sessions. They think the notes are fake, that you made them up. My stomach dropped. What? That's not possible. Marsha, I'd never. They said the notes are copied and pasted, that the dates are wrong. I trusted you. My brain started spinning before my heart could catch up. I opened my files, pulled up her chart, and there it was. Blocks of repeated text, identical entries logged days apart, dates that didn't match appointments, my name typed underneath each one, my digital signature. Only I didn't write any of it. I stared at the screen, blinking. Then I opened other files. 1, 2, 5, more. Nearly all had discrepancies. Therapy notes I never wrote. Billing codes for sessions that never happened. Panic climbed up my spine, hot and jagged. My hands trembled as I checked the access logs. There they were. Entries made at 2:13 a.m., 4:45 a.m., always outside office hours, always under my credentials. It had to be a mistake, a glitch. Maybe the new system Daniel helped me install was malfunctioning. Daniel, a cold chill slid through me. He had admin access. He set up the system, told me not to worry about the back end, encouraged me to take a step back from the busy work and focus on clients. I'd let him install everything: billing, documentation, cloud storage, all linked to my license. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that Daniel would fix this, so I called him. No answer. Texted, emailed, nothing. By the time I raced home, my breath short and my thoughts screaming, the house was silent, the lights off. His shoes gone from the entryway, drawers half open, a note on the kitchen table in his tight, efficient handwriting. Ava, I'm sorry. I can't be part of this. I hope you get the help you need. D. No confrontation, no fight, no goodbye. Just a ghost in a suit. I grabbed his phone from the nightstand. Factory reset, wiped clean. I screamed. I threw it against the wall. It shattered, like my life was starting to. Within days, I was served with legal documents, a civil suit and a criminal investigation, insurance fraud, overbilling, ethical misconduct. I was accused of falsifying therapy records for financial gain. Licensing board complaints followed. I was suspended. My clients, my people, were referred out. My practice closed its doors with a brown paper notice taped to the window. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, just paced and tried to understand how this happened, how I let it happen. Then came the knock on the door. 2 officers, polite, grim, clinical, handcuffs, a cold back seat, flashing lights that reflected off my neighbor's windows, mugshots, fingerprints, processing. I wasn't a therapist anymore. I was a criminal. The story hit the local news within hours. Beloved local therapist accused of insurance fraud. Engaged counselor allegedly overbilled dozens. Photos of me smiling with Daniel at a fundraiser plastered beside damning headlines. I thought the worst had passed until my lawyer called me into her office 2 days later, her face tight. He's cooperating, she said. Daniel, he's claiming you acted alone, that he was shocked by what he found after reviewing your system. He's positioning himself as a whistleblower. I laughed. A short, broken sound. He didn't just run. He handed me over, threw me to the wolves, and claimed innocence. Every time I showed him a fear, a flaw, a confession, he was storing it, shaping it, waiting for the moment it would serve him. He betrayed me with such precision, it was almost elegant. Daniel Brooks wasn't just covering his tracks. He was painting me as a manipulative, spiraling therapist who cracked under pressure. And the evidence? It was all there, all real, because he had planted it, using my trust, my login, my life. That's when the switch flipped. That's when the heartbreak calcified into something else, rage, and something colder underneath. Because I knew something he didn't. You don't survive abandonment, build yourself back up from nothing, and become a woman people trust with their pain without learning how to fight. He wanted to erase me, but he just made the biggest mistake of his life. I went from a respected therapist to a walking scandal. I couldn't walk into a grocery store without someone whispering. They didn't say it to my face. They never do. But I felt it. The sideways glances, the averted eyes, the polite half smiles that dissolved the second I passed. In a town like ours, reputation is everything, and mine was shredded piece by piece across every local news site and gossip thread. Ava Carter, the scammer therapist, the woman who faked notes, stole from clients, manipulated records. My name, once tied to healing, was now tethered to betrayal. The state board suspended my license, pending further investigation. My practice was shuttered. My income vanished. The people I helped, the ones I thought might vouch for me, disappeared into silence. Even the baristas at my favorite cafe, the ones who used to greet me with "Hey Ava" and extra foam, suddenly forgot my name. Eventually, I stopped leaving the house. I moved back in with my mom. At 32, into the same room I painted lavender in high school. The posters were gone, but the shadows remained. I sat in bed most days, scrolling through articles about myself, hate reading Reddit threads where strangers debated whether I was mentally unstable or just greedy. My mother, Carol, tried to help. She made casseroles I didn't eat. She folded my laundry and left notes of encouragement I couldn't read without crying. She never said, "I told you so," even though she could have. And then there was Lena, my best friend, my lifeline. She refused to back away, even when I did everything to push her out. She came over with takeout and binders full of legal documents. She highlighted everything, made spreadsheets, asked questions no one else was asking. "This doesn't add up," she muttered one night, flipping through an activity log. "These edits, they were made remotely. Look, your system has an IP tracker. These didn't come from your home or your office." My pulse jumped. "You think he was logging in off-site?" She nodded slowly. "I think Daniel planted every piece of this." That was the first flicker of oxygen in weeks. I hired a new lawyer, a woman named Elise Moreno, tough as hell and far less polished than the last one, which I liked. She actually listened. After one meeting, she leaned back in her chair and said, "I believe you, but believing you isn't enough. We need proof." I didn't have proof, not then. But insomnia makes you obsessive, and depression makes you dig. I started combing through every scrap of data Daniel had touched, every folder, every app, every trace of his presence in my digital life. One night, in a file labeled Personal Taxes 2022, buried in a cloud storage backup he forgot to wipe, I found it. A private Dropbox account, synced to one of his old startup emails. The folder tree looked innocent: receipts, invoices, spreadsheets. But one folder, labeled Archive Backlog, was filled with PDFs, fake therapy notes, hundreds of them, all dated, signed under my name, but created in Photoshop. He saved everything: versions, drafts, logs of edits, like some twisted trophy collection. I scrolled in disbelief. And then my breath caught a subfolder labeled Support Hack. Inside, screenshots of Venmo transactions, names, notes like UI access patch, and remote injection script done. Daniel had paid someone, a freelance tech consultant named Leo Corrigan, to breach my client management system and implant the fraudulent records. The total, $8,500. Spread out in small, casual payments. It was all there. Evidence. Finally. And I didn't run to the police. Not yet. Because if Daniel was willing to erase me this thoroughly, I wanted more than justice. I wanted him exposed, humiliated. I wanted him to feel the cold grip of isolation, the whisper of fear that he wasn't in control anymore. So I made a plan. I started by researching his past. Every post, every connection, every woman he'd publicly dated. And I reached out. Most didn't respond. One did. Maya Lin, a UX designer in San Diego. Gorgeous, sharp, and furious. We met over Zoom. She was hesitant at first, but the second I said his name, her eyes hardened. "Daniel Brooks," she said. "That bastard." They dated 2 years before me. He told her he was starting a company and needed seed money. She gave him $15,000. He vanished 3 weeks later. No goodbye, no refund, just a deactivated number and a charming lie about pivoting to stealth mode. "I thought I was stupid for falling for it," Maya confessed, but I never forgot. We began trading stories, emails, documents. We built a timeline and a pattern. Daniel didn't just ghost people, he harvested them. He was a serial manipulator, a con artist who moved from woman to woman, business to business, spinning a story of brilliance and boyish ambition, then disappearing with whatever he wanted most: money, access, connections. With Maya's help, I started building a file, a living, breathing case, not just of my betrayal, but his pattern. I wanted to understand him fully, the predator behind the charm, and in doing so, I started to reclaim the parts of myself he'd tried to erase: the observer, the analyst, the therapist. I was no longer just the broken ex-fiancé. I was the investigator. Some nights, I still broke down. I still shook with anger or curled up in the fetal position, whispering, "How could I not see it?" But those moments passed faster now, because I had purpose, focus, rage, yes, but also clarity. He taught me to question everything. Now I was using that against him. Soon, Maya and I would reach out to another woman, and then another. A breadcrumb trail of broken trust and stolen futures. I wasn't ready to go public. Not yet, but I was coming for him. Slowly, quietly, with evidence, with allies, with everything he thought I was too weak to gather. Daniel once told me, "Everyone has a pressure point. You just have to press the right nerve." He was right, and I just found his. He thought he buried me, but I wasn't dead. I was digging. When I filed the civil suit, I didn't tell anyone except my lawyer and Lena, not even Maya at first. I wanted the silence. I wanted him to think I was still broken, still retreating in shame, while I laid the foundation for the reckoning he never saw coming. We sued Daniel Brooks for defamation, fraud, invasion of privacy, identity theft, and emotional damages. 5 charges, 72 pages of documentation, 2 years' worth of lies in black and white. He was served while leaving a networking event in Boulder, probably expecting applause for his latest startup pitch. I heard from someone in the tech scene that he laughed when he saw the paperwork. But then came the depositions. That's where the smirk started to crack. He showed up in a navy suit, oozing artificial charm and faux confusion. "I don't know why she's doing this," he said to the court reporter. "Ava was struggling. I tried to help her." My lawyer, Elise, didn't blink. She let him spin for hours. And then, as casually as pulling a file from her bag, she pressed play on a USB recording we'd recovered from one of Daniel's old cloud backups. The voice was unmistakably his. "Yeah, man, I had to get rid of Ava before things got serious. She was getting too intense, too much baggage, so I wiped everything and let the cops figure it out." Silence. Daniel stared at the speaker like he could reverse time by sheer force of denial. "You doctored that," he said quietly. Elise raised an eyebrow. "It's time-stamped, metadata intact, recovered from your own Dropbox archive, same IP that accessed the other forged files." Still, he tried to pivot. "That was a joke, locker room talk." Then Maya walked in, and the second woman, Brianna, after her. Both gave sworn statements. Both testified about how he lied, manipulated, took their money or trust or both, and disappeared. We presented emails, messages, screenshots, a clear pattern of fraud, coercion, and emotional abuse. What had once looked like an isolated scandal, a therapist gone rogue, was now starting to resemble something much uglier. A man who weaponized trust, who stole lives, one woman at a time. The district attorney reopened my criminal case within days. My original charges, insurance fraud, digital tampering, professional misconduct, began to unravel. With the new digital forensics and Daniel's audio confession, my supposed evidence trail was exposed for what it really was, a frame job. The moment I got the call from Elise saying, "They're dropping the charges," I sat on the floor of my mother's kitchen and sobbed until my ribs hurt. The nightmare was ending. But Daniel's was just beginning, because now he was being investigated for wire fraud, identity theft, obstruction of justice, and falsifying medical records. They arrested him 2 weeks later. He was pulled from his overpriced co-working loft in handcuffs, his new venture team watching in stunned silence. I watched the footage alone, sipping tea, numb and buzzing at the same time. When it came time for sentencing, the court allowed me to give a victim impact statement. I almost said no. I didn't know if I had the strength, but then I stood before that courtroom, the same one where I'd once sat as a defendant, and I spoke. "My name is Ava Carter. I'm 32 years old, and for the past year, I've lived in the aftermath of someone else's lies. I told the judge how I'd built a life around helping others heal, and how Daniel used that trust to dismantle everything I loved. How I had almost lost not just my practice, but my sense of self, my belief in people, my ability to feel safe in my own mind. I looked directly at him when I said, 'I loved you. I trusted you, and you tried to erase me. You thought you were smarter, slicker, that you'd disappear again and leave me in the ruins. But I found every piece of myself you tried to break. And now, everyone sees who you really are.'" I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. He did. He looked smaller than I remembered. No charm, no grin, just a man whose mirror had finally cracked. Daniel Brooks was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, fines, restitution. But that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that I walked out of that courtroom free, name cleared, voice restored. The headlines changed. Charges dropped against local therapist, tech entrepreneur under federal investigation. Victim turned advocate helps expose serial fraudster. I got my license back. Some clients even returned. The whispers in the grocery store stopped. And when they did return, it was only to say, I'm glad you're okay. I'm not naive anymore. I know justice is rare. I know I was lucky and relentless. But I also know this: you can't erase a woman who knows how to rebuild. Forgiveness isn't always about letting someone off the hook. Sometimes it's about letting yourself breathe again. Getting my license back didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no confetti, no champagne, just an official letter in the mail and a quiet moment of stillness in my mother's kitchen. The same place I'd sat, broken, just months before. I held the envelope in my hands and whispered, I'm still here. Because that's what survival is. Sometimes. Not a grand gesture, not a triumphant speech, just the quiet, persistent refusal to stay buried. I reopened my practice, slowly, carefully, this time on my own terms, smaller, more intentional. I didn't want a full calendar or a packed waiting room. I wanted connection, integrity, space. But what surprised me was how many women began reaching out, not just former clients, but strangers. Messages from people who had read the articles, seen the headlines, heard about the trial. I think something similar happened to me. I thought I was alone. I didn't know it had a name. Betrayal trauma, gaslighting, legal manipulation, digital abuse, words most people never hear until they're already drowning in them. So I started something new, just a small group at first. 5 women, then 10. We met in a borrowed yoga studio with a coffee pot in the corner and folding chairs in a circle. No name, no formal agenda, just stories, grief, laughter, truth. We shared what had been taken from us and what we were reclaiming. One woman lost custody of her kids because her ex falsified mental health records. Another was sued into bankruptcy by a man she once loved. We were different ages, backgrounds, histories, but we knew the same pain. And in that circle, we weren't victims. We were rebuilding. Eventually, I gave an interview to a podcast called The Burn File. It was supposed to be a one-off conversation, just me and a mic and a glass of water. I didn't expect it to go viral, but it did. The title, The Man Who Hacked My Heart. And suddenly, my inbox overflowed again, this time with gratitude. Women, men, survivors, lawyers, therapists, people who said, I didn't know someone else had lived this. My face was no longer on a mugshot or a headline. It was on a story of survival. I still have bad days. There are still moments, a song, a scent, a flash of memory that make my stomach twist. Healing isn't linear, but it's mine now, not his. And I've learned to forgive, not for Daniel, but for me, because anger is a heavy thing to carry, and revenge, once sweet, eventually spoils. What stays with you isn't the justice, it's the strength you found clawing your way back. I don't date much now. For a while, I didn't at all. It wasn't about fear. It was about learning to trust myself again. My gut, my instincts, the way someone's words feel in my body. not just my heart. I no longer ignore red flags in the name of love. I no longer confuse charm for character. And when I finally did go on my first date with a kind eyed paramedic named Eli who asked more questions than he answered, I told him the truth. Not everything, just enough. I've been through some things, I said, but I'm not broken. He smiled. Good. Neither am I. We took it slow. No rushing, no rescuing, because I don't need saving. I needed to remember who I was before someone tried to erase me, and now I remember everything. In the end, Daniel was a chapter. A violent one, yes, but not the whole book. The rest of the story is still being written. By me and for me. Not with vengeance, but with truth, with breath, with light, with every woman I help say, I believe you, and mean it. Because the most dangerous people wear the kindest faces, but so do the strongest survivors. And I am both. He thought he ended me with a lie, but what he really did was free me with the truth. The courthouse looks smaller now. It's a gray afternoon. The sky low and soft. The kind of day where the world feels hushed. I walk past the steps where it all began, where cameras once flashed, where whispers followed every footstep, where I stood accused of crimes I didn't commit. Today, no one stops me. No one stares. I blend in, and I choose to pause anyway, not to relive it, but to reclaim it. Because I'm not the woman who walked out of that courtroom in shame. I'm not the woman who begged for her name back, her future back, her dignity. That woman was broken. But the woman I became, she's unbreakable. I look up at those marble columns and feel nothing but steady breath. My hands don't shake. My heart doesn't race. I'm not waiting for a verdict anymore. I am the verdict. He tried to destroy me with silence, but I answered him with story. He tried to make me disappear, but I made myself unforgettable. People still ask me how I survived, how I came back, how I found the strength. And the truth is, it wasn't strength at first. It was spite. It was survival. It was Lena's hand on my shoulder and my mother's voice in the dark. And 100 tiny choices to keep going when I had every reason not to. But somewhere along the way, spite turned into purpose. Survival turned into something sacred. And I realized you can burn down someone's house, but you can't touch the foundation if it's made of will. So I built again, brick by brick. Not the same house, not the same life, but something stronger. The screen fades to black as I smile. Not wide, not forced. Just enough to say, I know who I am, and no one's ever stealing that again.